Hello, welcome to my Pgcap 702 assignment. This is the negotiated study module and it's technology enhanced learning. The use of student produced videos to facilitate the learning of first year undergraduate paramedic clinical skills, utilising video to improve competency through self and peer assessment and reflection. This presentation is intended as an information resource for staff and colleagues and will provide information on using video within teaching of clinical skills. It will review the current literature and focus on pedagogy. So, we should start by discussing the student. So what does our typical student look like? Well, the answer is there's no such thing as a typical student. Since 2000, there's been dramatic change in higher education with increased participation rates, and this has resulted in increased student and academic diversity, and has led to changes in the teaching and learning approaches. The first university course for paramedic practice was introduced in 2006 and in Plymouth in 2008. Now degree access to the paramedic register with the Healthcare Professions Council is the most common route. This is a vocational and professional course and appeals to a diverse range of students with varied academic orientations and commitment. Despite the diversity, evidence would suggest that our students have something in common. According to the Office of National Statistics 2017, 90% of households now have the internet and 73% of adults are accessing the internet on the go. The impact of technology at Plymouth University can be seen clearly with the ASTI annual report of 2016, which shows that the digital learning environment is accessed by over 18,000 unique users and the mobile with app achieving over 24,000 registered users. These figures suggest that students are utilising technology, but how do we ensure that it is enhancing their learning? So let's start by exploring what learning is and what differentiates it from teaching. So as a noun, teaching may be recognised as an occupation or profession. As a verb, it's an action undertaken by a teacher. Now both definitions are valid, even if students remain passive or disengaged. Learning, however, differs. The process of learning can certainly occur in the absence of any teacher. In this presentation, we're looking specifically at the learning of clinical skills. Let's have a look at the background. So the module Power 101, Foundations of Pre-Hospital Patient Care, is one of the first modules that our students complete in their first year. This Level 4 40 credit module is designed to prepare students for their first placement block. The current method has been taught with a theory session, where theoretical principles behind the skills are explained, and later a practical session. The sessions are usually didactic and teacher-led with a surface approach. The instruction style of teaching relates to behaviourist theory, with the emphasis usually on repetition and reinforcement, a practice makes perfect approach. McGaffey et al. 2006 recognises a strong association between time spent using simulation and subsequent achievement of standardised learning outcomes. Students have instruction, they practice, and they give the expected response. However, Eisenberg et al. 2005 identifies that repetition alone may not promote effective learning. So why change the current method? The aim of these sessions are not merely to provide the learner with facts and opportunities to practice psychomotor skills, but rather to more broadly develop their problem-solving skills and clinical intelligence, recognising Piaget's association that intelligence is what you use when you don't know what to do. It is well referenced that newly qualified healthcare staff can feel anxious when leaving the relative safety of the classroom to enter qualified practice, and so building these clinical intelligence prior to exposure to real patients is both essential and ethical. When we look at Plymouth University's compass, we can also see the higher education demands more than just preparation for assessment. Graduates should be resilient and thriving individuals, sustainable and global citizens, competent and confident professionals, and critical and creative learners. As previously discussed, higher education has significant changes in recent years, often driven by political drivers. In 2012, the Higher Educational Institute was given permission to triple their tuition fees from £3,000 to £9,000 a year following the Brown Review. Consumer identity appears to be increasingly recognised by students. A study by Bonce, Baird and Jones 2016 looks at the student as consumer approach to higher education and its effect on academic practice and performance. Issues were examined in the current study by studying 608 undergraduates at higher educational institutes in England and their consumer attitudes and behaviours in relation to the higher education, the learner identity and academic performance. The analysis revealed that consumer orientation mediated traditional relationships between learner identity, grade goals and academic performance, and found that higher consumer orientation was associated with lower academic performance. Student as producer. Funded by the Higher Education Academy as part of the National Teaching Fellowship Scheme, and the Student as Producer project was developed by Mike Neary, working with the University of Lincoln, and seen as a radical idea to reconnect the core activities of university. Student as Producer emphasises the role of student as collaborator in the production of knowledge. The capacity for students as producer is grounded in the human attributes of creativity and desire, so that students can recognise themselves in a world of their own design. However, it is not just about teaching students how to make content, it is also about students reflecting, critiquing and reviewing each other's content, and critiquing and comparing content with content that is already available. I propose a deeper learning approach influenced by the theories of constructivism. Constructivism requires a more student-led session. When students become their own teachers, they exhibit the self-regulatory attributes that seem most desirable for learners: self-monitoring, self-assessing, self-teaching. When the introduction of the electronic portfolio using the PebblePad platform into the paramedic programme, we have seen locally how the students have adapted to the technology with ease. Students will construct their own learning through the development of clinical skills videos that they will attach to their portfolio for formative feedback. Constructivist alignment will be achieved as the teacher will set and facilitate the activity so that the learning objectives are met. Students will work together in small groups by producing individual 5-minute videos. They will be given the marking criteria for the clinical skills in the form of a marking rubric. Students construct their own knowledge and understanding through this activity. Introduction. The students will be introduced to this method of learning at the beginning of the module. They will have access to all the clinical skills via the electronic portfolio. Sample videos will be available via the digital learning environment for students to review. Students will be given allocated time in small groups to record their videos. Equipment. Students will have access to clinical equipment and the clinical skills labs. They will have access to iPads and iMovie software available for filming and editing. Previous experience has found that students find this software intuitive and easy to use. Feedback. The clinical skills video will form part of the formative assessment process. Feedback will be focused on self-assessment and peer review. Video recording allows the student to repeatedly review their own performance. This may improve reflection and development. Colfar et al. 2008 performed a literature review looking at the effectiveness of self-assessment on the identification of learning needs, learning activities and impact on clinical practice. Although unable to provide any solid evidence base for effective self-assessment, the review does provide some evidence that the accuracy of self-assessment can be enhanced by feedback, particularly video and verbal, and by providing explicit assessment criteria and benchmark guidance. The idea of benchmarking is reinforced further by S. Hawkins et al. 2012. in research titled Improving the Accuracy of Self-Assessment of Practical Clinical Skills Using Video Feedback, the Importance of Including Benchmarks. This research discusses the accuracy of self-assessment when reviewing clinical skills videos. Although this research uses medical students, the topic is generalizable to paramedic students. The research found that when students were given a benchmark gold standard video to view, they became accurate in their self-assessment. This is an interesting result, and inclusion of self-assessment and benchmarking videos will be available to the students. Ferguson, Wakelin and Berry a 2014 review explored the value of feedback for medics. They identified some benefits to using multiple sources. Morgan et al. 2002 recognised that in general, while students learn from their own experiences, they can also learn from observing others' practice too. Students will be working together in small groups and encouraged to provide peer feedback via a peer feedback form. So what next? Impact on my own practice. Instantly, I needed to create some benchmark videos. I've already done one, and the link will be attached to references. This has led to me critically analysing other skills videos and helping me to develop my own creativity around producing and editing content. Looking how I can improve will help with my facilitating the students. Students will be able to add their videos to the PebblePad portfolio. Practice educators will be able to review the students' videos. This is the potential for future involvement of the practice educators with the development of students' clinical skills. Video Clinical Skills Assessment, Strand et al. 2013, a very small pilot study, and yet produced some interesting ideas. Within the study, nurses used video capture technology to record them performing clinical skills, which was later assessed forming the summative assessment of their skills. This has potential for future development. Wider application. Students producing content clearly does not have to be confined to paramedic clinical skills. The work by Neary et al. 2014 around student as producers clearly demonstrates the benefits of students when they become involved in the development of their own learning. This sort of activity can start to bridge the gap between student as consumer and student as producer. Student feedback. Gathering student feedback is clearly the most important aspect to enable development and change, to ensure that learning was enhanced by the process, as well as end-of-module feedback. I will also ask for feedback on the sessions. Summative assessment will be closely monitored and compared with previous years.